And Solomon is the man who writes the book that says, I've been there and done that. I've got the t-shirt to prove it. And if you'll only pull up your chair and listen to me, young people, stop being stubborn, stop being a stiff-neck, stop being rebellious of heart. Listen to what I have to say. I'm going to teach you some things about life. Now, you can go do life the way you want to do life. You can bang your head against the wall if that's what you choose to do. But I can lead you to the good life if you'll only listen to me. I want you to go with me back for a few moments to 1 Kings chapter 2. I want to take you quickly and briefly through the life of Solomon. As you know, David was the king to whom, or was the king that was the penultimate king. Every king after him was compared to him. When Solomon came to power, his father had died. You notice in chapter 2, verse 10, so David rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of David. The period that David reigned over Israel was 40 years. 7 years he reigned in Hebron, and in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years. Then Solomon sat on the throne of his father David, and his kingdom was firmly established. Let me give you an insight into Solomon's kingdom. David had done all the fighting. David had done all the warring. David had done all the defeating. For the most part, King Solomon is going to rule over a 40-year period of time that's going to be a time of relative peace. That means that most of the money that they have isn't going to have to be spent on wartime efforts. Most of the money they have is going to be able to be spent in Jerusalem, and specifically on the building of the temple. Turn over, if you will, to chapter 3. I want to simply mark this in your mind. Verse 1. Now Solomon made a treaty with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and married Pharaoh's daughter. Oh my. Oh my. You say, well, he's 20. At this point in his life, he's 20, 21, 22 years of age. He's very young. He's given this responsibility, this task of ruling over this great people, the people of Israel. And he's very young, and he made a dumb mistake. This is not something that he should have done. He entered into a treaty with the king of Egypt, and as a part of the agreement, he gets a woman from Egypt to become his wife. Do you know what God said about these kinds of things? God had already told them, you don't intermarry with the pagans around you. Because if you do, the end result is they will take your heart and turn it away from the Lord. But he's a young man. We often look at young people and we say, they messed up. They made a mistake. Maybe the next time they'll do better. Maybe the next time they'll make the right choice. Maybe the next time they'll remember what happened the last time and they won't do it again. That's why they're married 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 times. Maybe they won't do it again. Well, just keep that mental note. He married the daughter of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. But you'll notice in verse 3, same chapter 3, verse 3, and Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes. Did Solomon love God? Yes, he did. He made a mistake, but he loved God. He was walking in the statutes of his father, except, will you circle that word? We should seek to eliminate every exception possible from our lives. Right? He loved the Lord, walking in the statute of his father David, except that he sacrificed and burned incense at the high places. Oh no, not only has he married a daughter of the king of Egypt. It says, yes, he loves God. Yes, he loves God. But here he is offering sacrifices at the pagan places of sacrifice. Come on, Solomon. Okay, 21, 22, 23, 24. We'll give you these mistakes. Okay, we got it. You got to understand. You got to learn from your mistakes. Right? Anybody with me? Well, Solomon knew this task was way over his head. Verse 4, now the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for there was a great high place. Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon. Okay, Lord, I'm going to come help. I'm going to come help this young man. I'm going to come help him. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, ask what I shall give you. And Solomon said, you have shown great mercy to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in truth, in righteousness and uprightness of heart with you. You have continued this great kindness for him, and you have given him a son to sit on his throne as it is this day. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king instead of my father David, but I am a little child. I'm so young. Okay, you shouldn't have married the daughter of the king of Egypt, and yeah, you shouldn't be going to those pagan high places and offering sacrifices, but you're young. God says, look, what can I do for you, Solomon? How can I help you? In your heart of hearts, I know you love me. How can I help you? Verse 8, and your servant is in the midst of your people, whom you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to be numbered or counted. Therefore, give to your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours? And what does he ask for? He asks for wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is the ability to make good decisions. Wisdom is the ability to make good choices. As you'll see in a few moments, wisdom is the ability to see life from God's perspective. When you can see life from God's perspective, you can walk through the maze without coming to so many dead ends, because you see where they lead. And God says, what would you like me to give to you, Solomon? I know you're young. This is an awesome task that's been placed on you. You love me, and I don't want you to leave your love for me. So what can I do for you? And he didn't ask for money, and he didn't ask for power, and he didn't ask for prominence. He asked for what every one of us should ask for. He asked God for wisdom, and God says, I'm going to give it to you. As a matter of fact, God gave him more wisdom than anybody of the day to make good choices and good decisions. Look over, if you will, 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 29. Chapter 4, verse 29. And God gave Solomon wisdom and exceedingly great understanding and largeness of heart. That means a breadth of understanding that was like the sand of the seashore. It's limitless. Thus Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the men of the East and all the wisdom of Egypt. You notice down in verse 32, he spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. I mean, here is a man early in his life who's been endowed with this incredible insight to life, this incredible wisdom to govern the people, this incredible wisdom to make good choices in his life. Solomon will launch from here. By the way, his wisdom is immediately challenged. It's immediately challenged, and he demonstrates the wisdom that God has given to him. But then he launches into this project that was long something that his dad wanted to accomplish, King David wanted to accomplish, and that was the building of the temple. And God says, you can't build it. You're a man of war. I won't let you build it. But David did what? David gathered the materials, many of them, maybe most of them, the materials for the building, and he left the building of the temple to his son Solomon. And Solomon begins a 7-year process of building the temple. And if you'll turn over to chapter 8, the temple has been completed. It's time for the dedication of this temple. And Solomon, this man who's been endued with the wisdom of God to be able to govern these people, to have insight into life like no one else of that day had insight into life. Notice in the prayer he prays at the dedication in verse 57 of 1 Kings chapter 8. He prays, and what an incredible prayer. May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our fathers. May he not leave us nor forsake us, that he may incline our hearts to himself, to walk in all his ways and to keep his commandments and his statutes and his judgments, which he commanded our father. Do you get it? 7 years later, he's been given this wisdom. 7 years later, the temple's built. And he's praying, oh God, help us to keep walking in your ways. He's got some flaws, as all of us do. He's got some flaws. There's some areas of his life that aren't where they need to be. But here he is. God gave him wisdom. He gets the temple built. But somewhere along the way, Solomon began to drift. If you don't know this, the Song of Solomon was written when Solomon was a very young man. There's a great story about who the Shulamite women potentially could be for whom he wrote that incredible poem. In those early, up to maybe the middle years of his life, when he's building the temple and he's building the palace, he's exuding this wisdom that God has given to him. Yes, he's still married to that Egyptian woman. And yes, he's still going sometimes to these pagan shrines where he's offering these sacrifices. He shouldn't do that. But he has deep down within himself a love for God. But as time continued to pass, notice 1 Kings chapter 11. But King Solomon loved many foreign women. Chapter 11, verse 1. King Solomon loved many foreign women, as well as the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, the Sidonians, and Hittites. All of that in violation, as with the daughter of the king of Egypt. All of it in violation of Deuteronomy 17:17. But he loved all of these women from the nations of whom the Lord had said to the children of Israel, you shall not intermarry with them, nor they with you. Surely they will turn away your hearts. Oh, listen to me, young people that aren't married, singles that aren't married. Don't marry because you think you just got to get married. Your time is running out. Because if you marry the wrong people, they'll turn your heart away from the Lord. He marries these women. They turn his heart away from the Lord after their gods. Solomon clung. Hear the words? He clung to these in love. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. I'm surprised they just didn't bury him under all the dirty clothes that had to be taken care of. That turned away his heart. Verse 4, for it was so when Solomon was old. When Solomon was old. When did Solomon write Ecclesiastes? When he was old. For it was so when Solomon was old that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. And Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord and did not fully follow the Lord. Look at verse 9. So the Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned from the Lord God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Once to tell him, I'll give you wisdom because you've asked for wisdom. Another time to reaffirm the promises. You walk according to what I tell you. I will bless you. I will bless you. But if you don't walk according to what I tell you, you will experience the curses. Solomon paid no attention. He kept right on marrying these women. I guess so. 1,000 wives and concubines. I mean, can you imagine building enough rooms for that many people to live in the palace? And what's interesting when you get to verse 14 of chapter 11, for the first time, God starts sending the judgment. Now the Lord raised up an adversary against Solomon, Hadad, the Edomite. Now here's the picture I want you to get. I'm going to finish up here. Almost finish up here. Very early in his life, God says, I want to give you wisdom. I want you to make good choices and right choices. And God gave him that wisdom. But little by little, he began marrying these women. They kept turning his heart away from the one true God. They kept moving his heart further from God until Solomon began to live his life not on the plane of a relationship with God and a fellowship with God and a communion with God where he had a God's eye view on life itself. He began living his life according to what he could see and what he could understand. You do understand that all of these other gods, all of these false gods, they're false gods. They're rocks. They're pieces of wood. They have no life in them. If they're going to save anything, you have to save them. You got to put them in your pocket if they're in danger and carry them off. They can't give you any other perspective. They have no perspective. They're not even alive. And he began living his life according to what he could see, what was right in front of him, and what he could understand and what he could know. And you know where it led him? It led him right where I have watched again and again and again people go to a dead end. Solomon says, come sit at my feet. Come listen to me. I'm an old man. But I can tell you the way I lived my life under the sun, just doing what pleased me, what made me happy, what made me feel good. Yeah, 1,000 women in the household. What made me feel good, what made me feel powerful, just doing and living for me, the hedonism and the humanism and all of these other isms, just living according to the world is what I can see, led him to a place of absolute misery. And he came and he said, sit down and listen to me. You don't have to go down that path. If you'll only pay attention to what I'm telling you, there's another way to live that leads you to the good life where you can enjoy your life and your life takes on meaning and purpose and significance, and where when you get to the end of your life, you're not embarrassed at the way you've lived your life. Come sit at my feet. I've been there. I've done it. It doesn't work. Pay attention to me. I take you to one more place and I finish. Psalm 73. Psalm 73. Why do I want to live a life with an above the earth perspective rather than an under the sun perspective? An above the sun perspective rather than an under the sun perspective. Because when you live your life only by the humanistic perspective that's around you, by the way, you won't get that anywhere else but in God's Word and in God's church. You won't get that in the secular education system. As a matter of fact, you'll get the opposite of that in the secular education system. The only place you get that is out of this book and out of Bible preaching churches like this. You get that above the sun perspective. In Psalm 73, Asaph is going to describe what it's like when you see the wicked prospering and all you have is an under the sun perspective. Notice verse 1. Truly God is good to Israel, to such as are pure in heart. But as for me, my feet had almost stumbled. My steps had nearly slipped, for I was envious of the boastful when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. You ever felt like that? I'm working as hard as I can go just to be able to take care of and make ends meet. And those people over there are living in the most profligate way of life, and they have everything they want. Asaph knows exactly what you feel like. Verse 4, for there are no pains, that is, no pain in their death, and their strength is firm. That's a begrudging assertion that these people are healthy and they're filled with wealth and life just turning up roses everywhere for them. Verse 5, they are not in trouble as other men, nor are they plagued like other men. Therefore, pride serves as their necklace. Violence covers them like a garment. We've been watching it, violence in the streets of America. Pride, this is the month of pride, serves as their necklace. Their eyes bulge with abundance. They have more than heart could wish. They scoff and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. They set their mouth against the heavens. They curse God. They set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walks through the earth. That means they say anything they want, and they get away with it, and they excuse it. Well, that's just my personality. I can say what I want to say. And Asaph says, I don't understand it. These people just keep getting by with it. Where is God? Verse 10, therefore his people return here, and waters of a full cup are drained by them. That's an interesting phrase. I don't have time to go through. And they say, how does God know? I mean, they're tempting God. God doesn't know what I'm doing. He's not omniscient. And is there knowledge in the Most High? Behold, these are the ungodly who are always at ease. They increase in riches. Surely I have cleansed my heart in vain. You hear what he says? I mean, they're living in an easy chair. Life is turning up wonderful for them. And here I am. I cleansed my heart in vain. I washed my hands in innocence. For all day long I have been plagued and chastened every morning. He said, this doesn't seem right. Please listen to me. It may seem like the world can live any way they want and get by with it. But that's an under the sun perspective. Verse 15. If I had said, I will speak thus, behold, I would have been untrue. In other words, if I'd have been saying the things they said, I would have been untrue to the generation of your children. Young people, if I stand before you, young couples, young adults, 30s, 40s, and 50-year-olds, if the preacher stands before you and tells you what you want to hear rather than the truth of the Word of God, he's lying to you. I would have been untrue to the generation of your children. When I thought how to understand this, it was too painful for me. When all I could see was an under-the-sun perspective, and I saw the prosperity and the ease with which the wicked were living their lives and marching through the streets and behaving in ways that no one should even ever have to think of behaving. When I see it and they're getting away with it, it was just too hard because he was only seeing the under-the-sun perspective. You may think at this moment you're getting by with your sin. You're not going to get by with your sin. Verse 17, until suddenly his perspective changes. Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then I understood their end. Suddenly his perspective is not an under the sun perspective, it's an above the sun. It's no longer horizontal only in nature, it's now vertical in nature. He's now seeing life not just from the way man can see it, but he's seeing it from the way that God sees it. And he says, wow, I've been envious of all these people doing all these things and getting away with all these things, but now I understand that their end is not good. Verse 18, surely you set them in slippery places. You cast them down to destruction. Oh, how they are brought to desolation as in a moment. They are utterly consumed with terrors and as a dream when one awakes. So, Lord, when you awake, you shall despise their image. Thus my heart was grieved and I was vexed in my mind. I was so foolish and ignorant. I mean, living your life according to the Son perspective alone is foolish and ignorant. I was like a beast before you. It's like living like an animal lives. Nevertheless, I am continually with you. You hold me by my right hand. You will guide me with your counsel and afterward receive me to glory. Do you see the difference between an under the sun perspective and an above the sun perspective? Do you see it? Solomon says, come sit down with me. I'm an old man. And I know a lot of people don't like to listen to old men. They think we don't know anything. They don't think we have anything that we have to offer them. Just come sit down with me, Solomon says. I've got something I want to tell you. I want to tell you what it's like living under the sun, and then I'm going to tell you how to have the good life so that you don't get to the end of your life and regret the days that you've lived or regret the days that you missed that you could have lived the good life. But you wouldn't pay any attention, and you chose to do it your way, and you just wanted to live by what you could see and what you could know. You didn't want any other perspective that came from God. Don't make that mistake. What does James chapter 1 verse 5 say? If any of you lack, what's the word? Wisdom. You know what wisdom is? Wisdom is seeing life from God's point of view. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives liberally. And then he says, he doesn't slap your hand and say, no, you can't have any more. Nope, that's all you get. You've had too many cookies of wisdom. He doesn't slap your hand. He says, I want to pour it out to you. I want to give it to you because I want you to find the good life. The kind of life when it ends, you're pleased when you see me and not ashamed.